All right, welcome everyone. This is Politically Unhinged live. If with me today, I have Lady Hamilton of the Headmaster's Homeroom. I was on her podcast. Uh, what was it? Probably like what 2-3 weeks ago, right after CPAC.
Right? Yes, it was. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. Yeah, we did meet at CPAC. That's a blessing that keeps on giving to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it was great meeting everyone there. Meeting like-minded individuals, especially.
Right.
Yeah, it was a completely different experience considering being in a blue state versus being with people that actually have the similar values.
Right. And one of the reasons, I was really, I could say, blessed with going because, there's a lot of people there that, big politicians and so forth. And absolutely, people were interviewing them. It was great there to see that, to see the people speak. But that wasn't why I was there. I wanted to really get to know the guests and see what people were doing throughout their different communities. And that's why I say it's the blessing that keeps on giving, because you guys come on my show and I did a Young Americans, right? And you were on that show. And there was three other young men that have started great things in their communities. They're doing stuff at, ages from what, 13 and to you, I think you're what, 20, 24, something like that,
Yes,
right?
I'm 24.
Right, but four of you, and it just blew my mind. I mean, my students didn't even want to come because they thought it was just going to be a bunch of old fogies, and I was so surprised how many young people were actually there. Wasn't that? I don't know if you've ever. I've never been to CPAC, so I don't know if you've been before. But did that surprise you?
In all honesty, no. I mean, I haven't been to CPAC myself,
Okay.
but being involved in the conservative groups, especially here in Maryland, there is quite a bit of us, even though I'm in like one of the bluest of blue areas. Because actually during St. Patrick's Day, we were chanting GOP at the bar, and one of and the performer was just all the performer there was just all like, "Yeah, let's hear it for the GOP." So
Right.
yeah,
Oh, mercy. Yeah, well, it was nice. It was really, really nice to meet so many people, and whether they're doing something political or they're just working on community stuff, where they've started apparel companies, but just doing something, getting involved. I was like, wow, I must have met over 50 different people. That I have my podcast that is pretty booked out because I'm like, wow, not only did I get to interview you guys there, but I'm like, please come on and talk to people about what you're doing, because I think a lot of times my biggest reason for doing that is we hear in the news, and that's okay if they want, they keep screaming, do something in your community, because people should, right? But I never heard, I still don't hear very many solutions of what people are actually doing. So I don't know if people realize how many people are doing stuff, right? So it was so exciting to get to know everybody's story and share that, and continue to share that. So way cool experience for me.
yeah, I bet. I mean, I didn't get to interact with as many people as I would wanted to. I mean, part of that also comes from just like experience. It's
Right.
coming up to people. Realize so like with me being on the political campaign, people would come up to me versus me trying to come up to people.
Well, that experience comes from, because I was previously a chef. That was the first thing that I really started, doing, is working in restaurants. Well, it's not like the first thing. I was a waitress, bartender, those kind of things. But main career was, I was a chef for a very long time, and that's actually a technique. It's called working the room, and you can learn that in marketing as well. But I'm not afraid of anybody. I've learned that. And even if I feel like it or I have those jitters, it's just like, all right, get out there and just start doing it. And everybody's like, my gosh, I mean, I saw you all over the place. I was like, every time you turn, there I was again. It's called working a room and going and meeting and talking to people and doing that. But that was an experience from like serving or being the chef, where you literally are walking around from table to table, table to table, hey, and getting people what they need. Hi, how you doing? I mean, that is, the service industry. So that taught me, 20 something years taught me how to do that. But that was, probably why you saw me bouncing all over the place. I know I drove my producer. I mean, he was so tired because I was like, "You ready for another one? I got another interview for you. You ready?" He's like, "Oh my gosh." And then they had us there. You don't realize, a lot of people don't understand, if you're media, you're there from 5 a.m. to midnight for those 4 days. So by the time the last few days are rolling in, you're like, oh, right, okay, I'm tired.
Yeah.
So Awesome. I hear this is your first live show.
Yeah, it is. I'm very excited. I mean, like I haven't really done anything like live since like I guess you could say quarantine back when I was a comedian.
Right?
And but yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, it's at that point where I want to share the wealth, and with y- you and I becoming like really close friends, I would say helping each other out. I want to help
Yes.
you out with this movement.
I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to collaborate together and get to know each other. I tell a lot of people too about the libraries. People don't even understand this too. Like, if you wanted to start something, whether it's a reading class or an art class, or my husband's doing this Nurse Patrick thing, so people can come to him about like, okay, what did my doctor mean with all these prescriptions and all these side effects? And but you can go and book a room in a library for free. They have these little meeting rooms, or if you're doing something, they'll even sponsor you, and show you off and advertise for you that you're doing that. I mean, I started this in Arizona when I lived there, and we started a literacy program called We Read. And it was something that I started teaching the youth because I wanted them to find a way to get scholarships to go to school and in college, and to have not only that voluntary experience, you got letters of recommendation and you get involved in, your community. And it was awesome because not only were we teaching, they have that third grade thing, right, where you have to pass a certain kind of standard level, but they also teach citizen classes in the library, citizenship classes. So people from different countries who are actually going through the process, they have to learn English as part of the process. So they would come into the We Read program and practice reading with us. So I had high schoolers doing this. And by the time, it was done, and so the library was advertising for us. They're like, this makes us look great, and it was amazing. I mean, these kids were putting in hundreds of hours a year. I was like, wow, right? Every Saturday. And we did it for free.
Yeah, that's amazing. In all honesty, as a teenager, I could not picture giving up my weekends against just to have better people.
Right. You know what's amazing is I thought that they were going to say that too. I was like, okay, no way there's 16-year-olds going to get up, no, 8 o'clock on Saturday mornings, every Saturday. They're going to totally bail on me. And I was going to college at the same time, mind you, and raising 3 children. And you know what? I was the problem. I blew my mind. I'd be studying, or I'd be in school, and then, with my kids, and like, oh, Saturday morning, I got to go do this thing, right? And I got to wake up early, and I was like, but no, every Saturday they were there, just like ready to go, pumped up, because I think when you do service work, you leave feeling like you have just a sense of empowerment, like, oh my gosh, look what I did today, or look what I created, or look whose life I lit up. And you leave there just going, this feels so good. It was interesting that I was the problem, and I didn't cause a problem. I mean, I was like, okay, everybody's going, right? Even my own kids were like, yeah, let's go. I'm like, really? Okay, well, okay. I never canceled because of me, but my attitude, I was like, you guys, I'm just so surprised with you. And youth always surprise me. This is probably a lot of where I've seen so many miracles with youth. It's probably where I get my tagline that all youth are possible. They hate it. Oh my gosh, they hate it. I have been banned from every social media out there because I say all youth are possible. They're like, well, what do you mean? I've been my speech at graduation. I'm like, nope, you can't say that. I'm like, well, I don't need to speak. Like, what? But no, it's just really interesting. But yeah, libraries are a great resource. I know I kind of a little bit went off subject, but I've seen so many different things. You youth just blow my mind. I mean, look, you have this live podcast here, collaborating, helping each other. It's amazing. This is how we do it, people. This is how we do it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So, as you probably saw, that this podcast is called "The State of the Youth." So, where would you think the youth is? Do you think that they are more democratic, like in the sense like they're more towards the socialist realm, or are they more like they're closeted conservatives in it, but they just don't know that they are?
I think, well, this is interesting because I was a high school teacher for until I opened up. I still am, but in the public system for only 1 year. So I saw youth on the side when I created a program, and just saw them not even understand that they were possible to even get scholarships or build something or create something. So I saw this at a different level. And the reason I started my thing on the side during my college years, it was called Servicio, is because I heard them talking like, oh, well, I'm just going to get a job at Walmart. I mean, there's no future for me. I'm just kind of like going to stay in the hood situation, you know? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I was like, excuse me, but do you know that if I can get scholarships to go to college at this age, the number one pool is for a minority girl like you know, first generation? I was like, are you kidding me? You could get a full ride to go to school, or you could build your own business, or you could, they're looking at me like I'm speaking a foreign language to them. Like, what? So that's part one. And part two, when I was a high school teacher in the public school system, for example, we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s Day, right? I love him. In fact, behind me is a painting dedicated to him because it's called Only Love Can Conquer Hate. And I love Martin Luther King's saying that I look for a world, or I desire a world where my children grow up being judged on their character and not the color of their skin. I probably slaughtered it, but that's the main part of it. And so when I was get kind of back to the point, I'm in school and I have, you know, I'm seeing this, but the kids are sitting there going, well, we don't have equal rights or equal laws as we're celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.'s. And I was like, what do you mean you don't have equal laws? I said, the law, what do you think these people walked for and fought for? Are you in a segregated school? Like, well, no. I said, no, young Black women stood up for that right. People like Martin Luther King Jr. walked for that right. Now, there's a huge difference between law and mentality. Someone can totally have a racist mentality. Okay. Doesn't mean you don't have equal laws. How they prosecute you or how they judge you or how they treat you is based off of mentality, right? Of their emotions, their bias. But doesn't mean that people haven't fought for you have equal laws. So I think this is the problem. I think once you tell them these stories, this history, and show them that, I think that they get more conservative, more of like, oh, I'm sorry, they're doing what? And the what side, okay, you know, fought against slavery and what side wanted to free us, which they still don't know. And so I think, or even independent, leaning more towards conservative versus this kind of what we call woke, and we kind of make fun of that. But when you're only fed social media and you're just being told nonstop every 7 seconds something until it's like just ingrained in your brain, you don't really know all the facts. And I had a wonderful guest on a few weeks ago that wrote a book called Black Values Matter, talking about the conservative Black families. And that's true. I mean, I've lived around Hispanics in Arizona. I mean, just engulfed around Hispanics. And now being in the South, I also have a huge community of Black families around me. And these guys go to church every Sunday. I mean, my husband even tells me, like, when someone's sick, the whole family comes. You know, you're like unbelievable support for the family. And that's kind of being attacked right now really badly, right? The nuclear family. So when you point these things out, I think they really at heart are like that. But because of social media and because of the lack of support and foundational education, they're just spinning. And I think that once they understand the realities, it's a lot more to be able to judge what's happening around the world. And then I always tell my youth too, you got to judge somebody by their actions, not their words. Right. And so when they start taking that into consideration and looking at, like we looked at when I taught, it was, you know, of course, the presidential campaign coming up 2020, right? But who's your senator? Who's running for mayor? Who's running for your they're like, who? What? Well, you guys got to look into this. You're about in voting age. You know, you got to understand it's not just a presidential race. And then you got to look at people and judge them by what are they actually doing for your community, because those are really the people that are going to affect your community, you know, right instantly. And they didn't even know. Right. So I think the more that we talk to them and show that, at least you're getting them off of this crazy, and we have crazy on both sides, right? We have radicals on both sides, that they start at least being in the middle, if not more over to a conservative side, because we're like, oh my heavens, you know, I'm not being told the truth. I'm not being able to express a critical thinking here. I'm not even being taught how to critically think. And then I think that's where we are with our youth.
All right. Yeah. So like I remember back in high school, like granted, this was probably good lord, close to 10 years ago now. Oh, it was my sophomore year, and even in Maryland, we were looking at who was running. At the time, it was former Governor Larry Hogan running for his first
Right.
term, and they were telling us to look at all of these people that are running, and obviously I aligned with the conservatives even back then.
Right.
Since I grew up on the border of Mexico myself.
And it's really sad. I mean, that they took out things like economics and civics and stuff out of school. And history is even to some extent tainted, or I shouldn't say tainted, scalpeled, because they are just like going through certain points and leaving out a lot of things. And I love to challenge stuff. I always told my students too, hey, prove me wrong. I will totally stand corrected. Now, I could have a master's in history with my education. I chose, different pathways, but I took so many history classes, but I'm always still learning. And that's the good point too, is to challenge something, to debate that, to look things up, to use different sources. I teach a journalism class too. I'm like, I want you to bring me all sides, because something in the middle is the truth, you know and we would have crazy kind of things, but I think that you need to have them. I think our youth need to have their eyes opened, and to challenge the world, and not just go with the narrative, and I don't think that happens.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I remember also back in high school that so like I loved history even way back then. Then like growing up, even in elementary school, I would spout off facts about history, and my teachers would be all like, "You're not supposed to be knowing any of this right now." And I got to high school, and there were days where like my history teachers would be all like, "Anthony, I'm done. You're teaching the class today." They would literally just hand me the lesson plan.
Right,
Plan
because
it.
there's passion about it.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That's kind of one of the ways, pretty much we test at my school is testing is really different here. So you have to do a presentation of like a final presentation where you almost teach back. Um, you could pick it, like certain people do it differently. You like, I think with health, you had to pick a certain topic or a certain system, endocrine system or something like that. And you have to do a major presentation about it, like teaching a class back. That's how we judge that you've retained the information to pass you for a final instead of a computer or an actual exam. The only exam you would get maybe like that is math or something, right? But history, I love history, and I personally teach the history classes, but I have taken so many history courses from associates on. My favorite professor of all times is a history professor that started in my community college, and every class he had I took. And this is where I even get my nickname, Lady Hamilton. He was actual figure in real life, but he would call it, and he couldn't pronounce my first name, so he would come in and just be like, hey lady. I was like, oh, but the funny thing about it, and most people may not know, that there was a show called The Duke of Hazards, but back in my day there was called a show, it was called The Duke of Hazards. Okay. And so his last name is Hazard, Professor Hazard. So this, when he started calling me Lady Hamilton, I would say, oh, Sir Duke of Hazard. And I mean, unless you're in my generation, you wouldn't really get that, but he got it. So he had this kind of thing, but it stuck with me. And when I needed to have a name for my artwork, I was like, no, that's what I'm going to go by, and it's just kind of stuck. But because my love for history, in fact, the pieces behind me all have to do, my statement pieces per se, have to all do with something historical. And it takes me, well, I usually did one per semester, and I did them as for grades as well. But it would definitely take me a good month or two, because the research I put into these have to be accurate. I can't just call it fake news. I can't just be throwing out there fake news, right? If I'm going to tell a story, I want it to be historically accurate. That's why. But I love history, and you can see it in my paintings. You can see it in the passion. I can see why your teacher's like, yeah, teach that class, because you had a passion for it. But then it also made you remember history more, didn't it?
Yes, it did, but like at the same time, it was just all like I would be saying this stuff to people that were like in math class though too.
Oh, I
It
get it.
was- I'd be going out to my math teacher and like saying just like spouting something off randomly,
Right.
and they were just all like, Anthony, this doesn't have anything to do with the Pythagorean theorem.
But do you know who really invented that back in, and I can't even, I remember, but I know there's a philosopher that also did that way back in the days of like, um, before even Da Vinci and all those people, but it's just very interesting. I'd have to look that up, and I forgot that, but that's something I would have brought up. I was the same way in other classes too. He would bring something up, and I'm like, the Da Vinci did this, and he would do an invention on this, and they were like, okay, with the history and the art. So I was a double whammy. And they're like, but Da Vinci, I mean, unbelievable in medical drawings that he's done, the anatomy and so forth, and the inventions he's come up with. So I would have that. People like, okay, but you're just spitting out facts. And my children, anytime I talk about history, they roll their eyes. They're like, oh, right. And probably their most hated subject, because I'm like, I get excited about new documentaries too. I'm like, have you seen? Or archaeologists that are uncovering new things. I could have been an archaeologist, in a pipe dream, because I'm like, do you see what they just found? This dates back here. Or they're blowing up science, and it's just like, awesome. This is so great. You've just moved this timeline. Or I get excited about this stuff. Yeah. You got me all jazzed up talking about history. You know how exactly what to say to me. Awesome.
Yeah, since we're on the topic of history, what's your favorite time period to learn about? For me,
Oh,
it's gotta be the Middle Ages, because like I got really big into like knights and all, and I dedicate all of that to my second grade teacher back in
yeah.
Sierra Vista, Arizona, Mr. Nichols.
Really nice. Nice. That's funny that you're from Arizona. I didn't live too far from that area. I went to the U of A. So, yeah. Um, until recently, and it's really hard for me to pick a favorite, because I do something kind of like in world history, I kind of do around the world. But one thing I think that's becoming my new favorite, and I shouldn't say prehistoric, but I like to break up the Neolithic and go to the Paleolithic, because the more that we're finding in archaeology, the more that it's going back, where we can actually see stuff like footprints, and everything's carbon dated like 30,000 something years ago. And they talk about civilization being created like 7,500 BC, which is Neolithic time, for the very first civilization. But yet you go to this Paleolithic time, and people are living in groups of hundreds, and they're living in societies, and they're working, and the women had certain roles and the males had certain roles. And you would see, and you're like, this is just blowing my mind. And I really love this, because it's moving our timeline back more. So you're like, what is a civilization? These people for 30,000 years existed, and we act like, well, we just all of a sudden became civilized 7,000 years ago or whatever, right? So I'm becoming more and more of a love for that, because I think archaeology finds, within the last decade or so, gets me excited about that. But I really love the Harlem Renaissance. If I had to pick a certain, like, oh my gosh, gets me just jazzed up, is the Harlem Renaissance. And I love this because this was in the United States. When I teach this class, it was such an explosion of the arts. I just couldn't even believe the time, with the music, the writing, the poetry, the drama. I mean, this was just something where, Black culture was on fire, and so many things stem from that. And I get very excited. I mean, of course, we have the Depression, everything that, was worse for that. But I love to see when a new explosion of art. And that's something that I love our kids to write about and learn about, because not too many people talk about that. But you have some greats, Billie Holiday and Louis Armstrong, and Langston Hughes. I mean, I could go right. I just love it. So that's becoming one of my favorites as well. But it's hard for me to pick. It really is. That I love my history. There's certain history I've drawn about or painted about, but not necessarily my favorite. I bring awareness to it. There's a piece, and you could probably see right over here. You could probably just see her eye. That's called Comfort Women. That's inspired by my aunt. My uncle was in the Army. I can't tell you. I can't remember his level. Something a few levels below a general, I believe. But he spent his whole life in the Army and went back to Okinawa, and he met her, and she was a geisha, and he was in the area. And I don't know if he saw her walking. I don't know the whole story to that, but I know that she was treated really horribly when he brought her back here and married her by even my aunts, from what I've heard. But her story of how she even got there is she was a comfort woman. And what that is during World War II, 200,000 women were taken by the Japanese military, and they were sexually abused and raped 40 to 50 times a day. I mean, it was horrid, and caged and kidnapped and whatever. And they had a huge movement not too long ago showing the few that had survived still. And a shout out to that. And I thought, nobody knows his story. Very few people, I should say nobody, very few people even know this even happened. And so that's a part of history that I'm glad I know about and I can honor that way, but it's not like a favorite thing. So I have certain paintings I do that are not just, they're not really great stories, but people need to hear them, but interesting, isn't it?
It is, and that's the thing with history. It's just like it might not be like the most fascinating part, but like it's definitely something that we all need to know because
Yeah.
if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And sadly, we're seeing that in the United States right now with the tearing down of statues.
Right. Oh, speaking of ruining art, I mean, when I until I went to college, just within the last, few decades, right for my undergrad, I knew about the Holocaust. I mean, Coley grew up. I mean, it's sad that our this is actually it's a statistic when you look into it. It's sad that like 40% of our youth don't believe the Holocaust existed or don't know of it. And but I did. I grew up. I knew of it. My father was in these wars. And so, I mean, I definitely knew about these things, but what I didn't know was about the art heists. I mean, how did I not know that Hitler took more art and destroyed more architecture combined than all leaders combined? All leaders combined. I'm like, what? I had no idea about this. So I have a painting about it's called Thief because I had no idea about the amount of artwork that was taken and ruined because of this what he called degenerated art. So if he didn't feel it was worthy, or it was this during the modernist time, so I did like Picasso's and things like that, which these artists had to run for their lives, by the way, and he would absolutely burn them and take them, and he just because considered them absolutely worthless. And I was like, wow, I had just no idea. And it just blew my mind. And so I had a painting. I had to do a painting about that, right? Because do people know this or am I the only one, right? I mean, I think some people know that, but did you know that even existed?
Yes, if I remember correctly, the Mona Lisa was stolen during that time, wasn't it?
Oh, it was on an ambulance. No, they kept that thing on an ambulance. So that was really interesting story. My professor was talking about that, and she's like, when he started, and they knew that he was coming in to occupy Paris, and one of the ways they were able to find out so many things or find out where artwork was is they had this, like a curator that worked there that actually had this ledger that was documenting everything, which is crazy in itself. But they said that the Mona Lisa was just going through Europe just like nonstop on different ambulances. And I don't know, I can't remember if I know that I don't know if she's been taken or not, but I know that that was their number one thing to hide from him because he wanted it bad. Right. And I'd have to look that up. But I mean, the things that in this, I can't even imagine. There's so many things that were destroyed during that time. And then you also had a really weird situation because he had these art auctions. And so either he's going to destroy them or you can buy them pennies on the dollar. But if you buy them, you're supporting the war effort with the Germans, with the Nazis, right? So you had these museums going, oh my gosh, do I buy these Van Goghs? And or do I let them get ruined? Because if I buy them, now we're going to be supporting the military effort with the Nazis. I mean, you had such a weird thing going on here. Most of them, a lot of them chose to buy them, so they didn't get lost or ruined. But what a weird situation to be in. Either you buy the artwork or you're funding the Nazis. I'm like, it was, but yeah, another painting. But I did not know about that till I went to the university, and I was in my mid 30s. I was like, wow. So history, there's so many stories out there, and we can't dive into every story. But I don't think that history is kind of tainted in one way. Instead of telling you, I love to even show things that we've done wrong. We're not a perfect nation. Okay, yeah, okay. This when I taught U.S. history, I said, okay, guys, we have these wars. Go follow the money. That was amazing. They had to do presentations, and I put them in teams. I was like, all right, Civil War. You're in the North, and you're in the South. All right, go follow the money. And their presentations just blew me away. I was like, okay. And they just went right down to the sources. This one belongs to Still. And of course, what do you think the names were? Carnegie, JP Morgan Chase, Rockefeller, Rothschild. You're like, right? And did this amazing presentations on that. But they have to explore, you have to know about these things. And if you're just going to do bullet points, You're not really knowing. And it should be good, bad, and different. We shouldn't have this polished version that America's, spot free. But then, we need to show you, and I also like to do great things that have been created around the world as well. But it's important. And I think history might be, unless you have passion about it and you do projects, you're just, I think a lot of students are like, I don't want to listen.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things that my instructor uh, told me in high school was so this was actually the first day of class. He said, "All right, everyone who likes history, raise your hand." I was like one of two people. Oh, and he goes like, "All right, everyone else's whose hands aren't up. The reason why your hand isn't raised is because you don't have enough history."
Right.
Right? And that was really powerful to me.
Right.
Yeah, just hearing that.
Right. I agree. I like to give everything we do, at least one of the reasons I opened my school was to do projects. Everything is project based. And there's a lot of choice in that. We say it's art integration, but it's project based. So art integration in so many different forms, whether it's digital art or it's dance, drama, music, poetry, creative writing, painting, sculpting. I mean, it's a huge, huge, huge field. And so sometimes when you're doing projects, instead of just listening to somebody go wah 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 wah, right? It makes you have a lot more interest in it. So we learned how to do cuneiform writing, and that was really fun. And then I had my students create their own version of it, their own alphabets, and we had to decode each other's cuneiform in tablets. And they literally rolled out the clay, and they had the sculpting tools, and they were like chiseling it all in. It was so much fun, and they were laughing and giggling, and they had the funniest messages to each other. And then the funny thing I think about the cuneiform writing that you would see like, hey, what's up, LOL? And you're like they would talk like that back in the day, but this is their language, right? This is your language. So I thought it was really funny, to see LOL on a cuneiform tablet. I was like, it's really funny to me. But they had fun. Or creating, like in journalism, they created commercials for my school. I was like, oh my gosh. So to give them the whole avenue of digital arts. But it helps you have fun and learn more. I think that if students were given those options more in even public school, to create the project, and figure it out, you would not only learn more, but you get to dive into it. And it shouldn't be always, and you can choose the period that you like. Just like you asked me, what's your favorite part of history? I do that too. Okay, then go do a project on that. Versus, okay, maybe, instead of getting an assignment, maybe you don't like I do love the terracotta soldiers, right? I love that story as well. And maybe that's not your thing though. But, maybe the history of anime is your thing. That really gets people excited when I go over the history of anime, because a lot of people love to draw anime, right?
Yeah.
So I get a lot of students who choose that. Okay, can I do an anime project? Sure. Right. It's awesome. It's awesome. I'm glad that you had a teacher that inspired you. I wish there were more of that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing when teachers inspire young people, and it's unfortunate that we're not seeing these teachers popping up anymore. Or
No,
instead, these teachers are going ahead and they're pushing these ideologies that these kids shouldn't be knowing. I mean,
right,
going all like, yeah. So I think that because like growing up, call all of our teachers Mister, Mrs., Miss, and now there's one. I think it's like Ms.
is
Or
it?
is
I don't
for
know.
like yeah. It's weird. I heard this on the Daily Wire, and I was just rolling my eyes. You're just like, yeah, my name when you're addressing me, calls me is whatever.
Right.
It's
And it's what's really interesting is, I don't know if people even realize this too, because when you're a teacher, you don't go around saying a certain pronoun to a child. You call them by their name. It's not like, hey, is come here, right? It's, hey, Jane, come here. I don't care what you go by. I'm going to call you by your name. It's really interesting how this has become a thing, but in real life, it's more like you're always going to call that student by their name.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I need you to come over here, or hey, whatever, I need you to whatever, do this. And it's funny because right, we're not really going to call people pronouns. I don't do that in my school. You are what your birth certificate and things like that say. But I'm still going to call you by your name. That's just how it goes. And it's really kind of interesting. But I think we had a talk about this when I had my husband on because of the nursing background. And I love that he's able to explain this because he also teaches health and talk to these kids about child development, and talking about different stages, like from 1 to 6, how much your brain grows, what development stage you're in, from 6 to 12. And he literally broke it down. But you're so pliable. This is why they start. Sorry, 1 second. Let me get a little drink here. Sorry, everyone. Got a little frog in my throat. Okay. So you're so pliable from 1 to 6. This is why they're starting so early, because they can train you. Just like, when you have a 3-year-old or 2-year-old, right? And you want to stop grabbing something or climbing on something, you're disciplining them as a parent. That's how they learn. It's repetitive, 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 right? And so it's no different no matter what you want to teach. That's why they also say foreign languages are great to start from the word go, because kids are just absorbing. So if you're just repetitively taught something over and over and over again, you're going to believe it. Then from 6 to 12, or even, you're still even more in that, still absorbing. But by the time you hit pre-puberty and then into puberty, you have now your hormones kicking in, which just makes kids crazy in general. And I learned this in education when I was studying to be an educator, how in your teens, right? And all those hormones come in, your mind's crazy. You can't sleep. Your emotions are up and down. You're all over the place. So now you've had all of this training and you got puberty hitting in. You're a mess. And by the time you're in high school, now you don't know what the world. And you're going to go with fad. I'm sorry, you're going to go with fad. You want to be a cool kid no matter what. You always want to be part of the cool kid club. You never want to be bullied or beaten up. Most kids don't want to get beaten up. I'll say that. Even if you don't belong to the cool kids club, you don't want to be the oddball really either. So now you have this fad going on. You've been already told you can do this, you can be this, you can whatever. Your emotions have kicked in. Your psyche's messed up, and you're going along with the fad. And this is what we're seeing. Instead of what we should be really concentrating on is your ABCs. Can you even read? I don't want to grow up in a world where I can't read for myself and I have to depend on others' truths, right? And I'm going to say that, truths, to navigate this world. Because if we have to depend on somebody else to tell us what's going on, you're in a bad, bad way. You should be able to read and write and see things for yourself and understand things and have a critical mind to be able to analyze through life. And we're not doing that. And I think that's almost, purposeful. And it's really, really sad to see. But it's starting at the word go with our kindergartners. And then we're going to confuse them, saying you could be a he, she, or whatever. And what's even worse is we're going to give them medication and let them have surgeries. I mean, I'm sorry, who has the problem here, the child or the parent? And I'm really going to say that, because I'm not saying you can't go be that as an adult. You go do you as an adult, right? But what is the biggest problem is you're not even giving that child the ability to grow up and make a critical thought, because you're altering. If you go through like a section, you are literally altering your body. And that's very hard, if maybe never reversible. And maybe that child goes for that. Great. Maybe that child decides something else, because I've seen with my own kids, they've wanted to be 100 million things, and even kind of dabbled in that, hey, do I, am I attracted? Do I want to be married and whatever? And yes, they wanted to have a family and they have that, but they went through that same thing because I saw it in the school. They went through those same kind of things. Did I say you can't talk about that or feel that way or even think about it? But I'm not going to necessarily support that. I'm not going to give them medication. And I'm definitely going to make sure they're old enough to make their own choices when they're adults, not when they're 5 or younger. I've seen stories too where my baby knows what the baby does not know. I'm sorry, a 5-year-old does not know. A 16-year-old barely knows, but a baby, I'm like, we're pushing things to such extremes that we're just abusing our children.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so to our listeners over on YouTube and Twitch, if you have any questions, please type them right now, and we'll get to your questions as soon as possible. But yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, we're putting these kids on like hormone blockers. That's what like the left likes to call them. But like
Right.
what we should be actually calling them is chemical castration.
Right. And what are the side effects of these on top of it? You know, I mean, it's okay for a kid to question who they are or what they want to be. And they can absolutely can do that. You can totally support your kid without confirming that that's what you want for that kid. You'd be like, okay, great. You feel like that today? Okay. Hey, but I'm not going to, pursue that. I'm not going to encourage that. I'm going to let them do that because kids change all the time. I mean, just look at somebody who wants to be a firefighter or a doctor or whatever. I mean, just even with what they wanted to be when they grow up, they challenge that. And then when they see new possibilities, they challenge that. But your frontal cortex doesn't even fully develop until you're 26 years old.
Yeah,
You should
yeah,
have the ability. And I have friends that, on all different realms of life, whether they're gay or straight or whatever they are, but they absolutely also agree that we need to let our youth grow up and be adults and make those kind of choices. I mean, if they don't let you drink or smoke or even join the military or whatever until you're 18 or 21, why in the world would you ever consider a child to do this? And then you wonder why the suicide rate is doubled. Well, we've got you so confused, you don't know whether you're coming or going, right? And then if nobody, like these teachers, if you don't have the support from home and you're not getting from the teachers, where are you getting the support? We talked about counseling last week, and with our own children, um, who are adopted, and that's one of the reasons, we gave them counseling. They were from foster care, that we were former foster parents, but they stopped going after so many years because the counselors like a revolving door. They couldn't keep them there, or they would leave. And so we got a lot of different things that we got to be concerned about, but our youth are hurting and they're totally confused, and this is all the damage. One thing that I remember a student telling me too is, I always say, I believe in you guys. You guys can be anything, you can do anything. And sometimes I would even cry because I get onto these things and they'd be like, oh, Miss Hamilton, nobody has ever said that to us. I said, I'm sitting in a hallway, right, not in a hallway, but I'm sitting in a building with 75 teachers. You have been here pretty much throughout your whole schooling, and not one teacher has told you they believe in you. I'm the first. I was like, wow. And this brings you back to your point of, I really wish there were more teachers that are just like, you can go be anything. This world is so open to you, and you could be the next, who knows, the next rocket developer. You could be the next Google creator. You could be anything you want to be. And just, we're not even showing you guys the way. It's heartbreaking.
yeah. I agree. I mean, back in high school, I was even then. You're like, I want to be a million
Right.
and back in high school, I would be talking politics and all, and even to my teachers. And like I said, I'm in a predominantly blue state,
Right.
and so like even the teachers are pretty left leaning
Right.
here, and like I'll tell them my beliefs, which is basic originalist beliefs, and they were just like, "Oh my god, you need to run for president."
Wow. Right. And well, I just really wish that, but did they show you the way? This is the how you, I mean, and when I say show you the way, literally show you the way. Okay, well, if you really want to go after that, then you'll need to look this up and reach out to here and do this. I mean, this is something also, I mean, we say go do this,
Yeah,
but then we don't show you how to do this. I mean, my economics teacher last year, I can't wait. I can't wait for her to teach us every year. But she taught these kids how to start food truck businesses. It was just to teach them how to start a business. Then she chose food trucks. And so she taught them from business plans to logos to menus to everything, to a P&L sheet, a purchase and loss sheet, to actually doing presentations and pitching it at Shark Week to find funding. And these kids are like, what? And they're like, well, it could be any business, but now you know how to start a business for yourself. And I was like, what? While teaching economics class, I was like, this is brilliant. And so now, because of that model, at least one of our teachers in my school, at least, is always a career. So, like, I'm teaching culinary this year. So, okay, we're opening a restaurant. we're about to start our fourth quarter. And so we're finishing up our restaurant. So if you were to open a restaurant, how would you do it? Let me show you the way. And it's just really interesting to show them how to develop that, because maybe college isn't for you, or maybe I know where to get scholarships for trade schools, but geez, maybe it's starting a business, or maybe multiple. I have now running a school plus teaching. I'm a media now, and I have a podcast twice a week, right? Crazy. I have somebody reaching out to me to teach me how to blog, which I don't know yet, guys. We'll figure this out, right? I'm still a mom raising kids, right? I run a farm here, and I have a garden growing, and it's just craziness, all the things that I'm doing. And I'm like, what? So you don't have to say I could only do one thing. You can do multiple things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm still trying to picture you making a blog, though. You're just like going around with your cell phone, going like, "Hey, everyone, this is my day in the life." Like,
I've been told I need to write a book, but I'm like, who has time for that? Because even my life experience, even the ability to get to where I am, I mean, that's like just not a miracle per se, but a very God path. Especially when I look back at it, I'm like, I don't think he meant for all certain things to happen to me, but like, I could relate to my children when I got them as a foster parent, because I'd experienced kind of very similar things beforehand. Or, I was a chef, which is crazy, for a very long time, but my kitchen was so clean that you could come back there and eat off the floors most of the time. I mean, I really try to keep it extremely clean. But the children I got, I had to bleach my house down. I mean, walls, bedding, everything, and them every day. They would have to take baths with bleach in them, because they had a rare disorder that 13 people in the country have, or it might be the world, but 13 people for sure in the country have, and I have 3 of them. And they were abused so bad, their immune systems were shot. So they couldn't fight off any kind of illness, and they would get MRSA at the drop of a dime. And so they were very sterilized until we could build them back up and build their bodies back up healthily, right? And so here I am. I'm like, I look back and I'm like, you gave me kids that not only can I relate to them emotionally, I already know how to clean like you and believe, and used to this daily. And then going into college, and then seeing education, right, in the colleges, seeing what the youth were sitting there saying on the side that they had nothing. And then my majors weren't even in education. My undergrad was fine arts and Latin American studies, with a Spanish minor and history minor, right? But I ended up in education because of the side program, and had, Harvard and Columbia coming after me for education program. But then I ended up choosing Columbia and went to teachers college. It's teachers college, and got to see what they're teaching the teachers, and then went into the public school for a year and saw what they were teaching at that level. And then I'm like, wow. So when you look back and reflect, you're like, oh my gosh, everything was kind of put in my way, got me to where I was. So I didn't have the knowledge to make a difference. It's just crazy, absolutely crazy, So people think you should write a book. I'm like, I don't have time. Maybe the blog turns into a book. I walk around just telling my life story. I don't know.
yeah,
The person that is reaching out and partner, collaborating with me, she's fighting education in the DEI situation. And it's so great, because I don't think a lot of people understand this. And if there's parents out there listening, it's our title programs. That's the problem. I think people assume that your state taxes go to pay for your public education, which somewhat they do, but they go funneled into the Department of Education, and the Department of Education funnels it back to the states. And 60% directly comes from the federal government in title programs. And you may know of Title I. Most people know of Title IX, because that's your diversity, equity, inclusion. Some people know of Title 42, which is our border, right? And so there's all these title programs that were developed. But that's your purse strings. That's your Department of Education. And until you get those out of the public school, you're not going to get, certain programs out of there. It's part of it. And I had a podcast where I literally read, which it's 1 through 9 that are in our public education. I literally read through each one of them. And the thing is when you actually read them, I mean, who doesn't want to have, your privacy protected, and your HIPAA laws, of course, for medical protected? Who doesn't want to not be sexually exploited at work? right? You want to be protected that way from discrimination. Absolutely. So it reads that way, but then how do they manipulate it in your schools? I go, that's what you guys need to find out and ask those questions about, is how is that being manipulated? But that's really the link of the problem. And I've not even, here's a good example. Have you seen the recent Trump rally lately?
Which one? The one in Mar-a-Lago?
No, I think it was in Texas.
I have not.
Okay. There's just something I saw, and I don't think I saw the thing either, but I saw it shared, and I heard this, and President Trump had said that if I become president in 2024, I will not fund a school that has a mask mandate or a vaccine mandate. Fair enough. Okay, that's what he wants to do. But what did he just say there? I will not fund. That means the federal government has power to fund this for not. And that's kind of my proof right there, that that's how much federal power is over our schools. And that started in what, 1974 or 75? We went federalized. And so I personally think, if you're going to do that, you need to kind of take it back to state levels. I'd like to see the DOE department be totally different, kind of going, hey, oh my gosh, look what they're doing in Oregon to raise the standards. Or, hey, look what they're doing in Arizona to raise the standards. We need to share and collaborate. And, but no, not this universal program. It's really bad. Really bad.
Yeah, I agree. But I want to get back to the point where you were talking about God for a second.
Okay.
Because, like, as the youth in America, I believe it's only like about 40% are either religious or even just believe in him. And there's also that stigma right there. They're just like what you said, is that like you believe that he didn't necessarily made you do these things. And we have a lot of people who are agnostics, atheists, and all like, well, if God is actually real, why did he let these bad things happen?
I don't always have an answer for that. Sometimes I'm going to be honest, you struggle with that too. I did a painting, and not to talk about my paintings per se, but it was called Rape Culture. And I did that because of personal experiences, my children's experiences, and I wanted to bring awareness to this and human trafficking. And I have to be in that mindset to paint that, so you see that emotion. So I'm literally watching documentary after documentary and research after research, to the point where my professor's like, you need to literally get out of this, because you just, the depression in my face. I mean, he was like, he's like, you almost look suicidal. And that's kind of those situations when it's so bad, and human trafficking is one of the biggest businesses in the world, right? And you're like, how does this happen? Even on a personal level, my mom died in 2020. Why did you take my mom? And it's not an easy thing to understand, especially again, when kids are getting raped every 98 seconds, and trafficking so bad. And you're like, why is this happening? If there's a God, how come this is not being stopped? And then my husband will always answer, because of free will. He gave us free will, and it may not be your free will for this to happen, but it's their free will to kidnap these kids or take these kids and do the harm. Now, then I got really worked up too, because I'm like, oh my gosh, what can I do to stop this? And I had to really take it down to a personal level. What can I do locally, or what can I do in my community to make a difference? Because I can't take on the huge empire, just me taking on the huge empire of human trafficking. It's just way too big, everyone. It really is one of the largest businesses out there. I mean, if the world took it on together, sure, right? But I can't be in charge of their free will like they can't be in charge of mine. So that kind of makes it more understandable for me. But that's a hard question to sit there and say, why does God let these happen? But he gave us that choice of free will. Now, we can choose to believe in him or not. And maybe he's able to handle and give us blessings. And to even recognize the blessings, that's another thing too, right? Sometimes we expect these big, huge miracles, when it's the little things that add up to be a miracle. And I just had that experience not even a few days ago, and I was kind of struggling with something. And I was like, are you even there? I need this, I need this, and I've been praying about this forever, and I was like, come on, I need that. And in a matter of that day, so it's like just little, like seven, it was seven little small things that added up to be like, what is happening here? This person reached out, that person reached out. I got, this person collaborated with me. And I was like, what's happening here? But are you even recognizing that seven little miracles just happened to you to create a one little change in your event? And so if we don't even appreciate the small things, how are we going to recognize that he's in our lives? Or do you even know you can go to him at any time? People ask me about prayer, and I may have dedicated prayer times, maybe not. Depends on how busy I am. But here's the funny thing is I talk to him all day long. My kids will be like, who are you talking to? Oh God. Like he's around me at all times
Yeah.
because I believe that, so I'll be like, okay, hey, great. You know that I'm with you. All right. Just having a great time. Thank you for this. And being grateful. Gratitude. I keep getting reminded a lot. I think he wants me to have a real grateful heart. I don't know. But he's like, have you been grateful for anything today? Okay. And now I got to the point where I wake up going, you know what? I'm thankful for the air in my lungs and another day of breathing. What can I do to make a difference in somebody's life today? Even if it's like my own kids or my husband's or my animals. I mean, I don't know. I just put myself in a grateful way. But that kind of gives you a sense of spirit that you're even more connected. So I think everyone knows how much I believe in God and I believe in the Savior. And it's funny what you pray for. If you pray to get to know them, be prepared that you'll get to know them. And it may not come easy either. Sometimes when you get to know them, you're brought down to your lowest avenue. I've been there before in my life too. And you hit a rock bottom. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow. They say also on your deathbed, most people turn to God, right? So when you get that, so just kind of be I'm not saying you're going to have a hit rock bottom people, but when you ask for them to be around you and in your life, they will come and show you that they're there. But so will the adversary. He loves to fight that.
Yeah.
Loves to fight that. And his mission is to absolutely destroy your life, manipulate you, lie to you, and completely confuse you and make sure that you're not happy or a false happiness. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, I definitely have a big belief in God. He's a huge part of my life.
Yeah, I think that entire speech, while you were giving it, it actually popped into my head. I guess you could say like the spirit was talking to me.
Yeah,
It's actually a MLK quote, believe it or not.
yeah,
Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase.
that's right. That's right. One of our 3 slogans with my school is the only F's you get is faith, family, and foundations. And I put faith first. And people, is that even religious? Well, do I sit there and, do I say I have Christian foundations in my school? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I do believe in Christ. That means, therefore, I have Christian traditions. But I don't want to sit there and say, if you're Jewish, you're not welcome. If you're Muslim, you're not welcome, because I believe that all youth are possible. Okay. Doesn't matter. My job as an educator is to give you foundations for you to go live your dream. And I don't sit there and I don't pound on my students to sit there and say, oh, you must believe the way I do. Okay. But I want you to learn about faith. And if I could teach you that same example that you just said, just even if you're unsure and you just take that one step forward, it's amazing even watching them do that and teaching them that that's even possible can lead for you to even have a greater faith with God, no matter how you believe in him. But they don't even have faith. You guys don't even have faith in yourselves. You have no faith at all. It's really interesting. Some things and some people do really great with certain things, but for the whole, I think you don't have faith that you can even go become something in college or become something, out there in this world, other than I'm just going to go get a job in this town and do like everybody else does and just whatever. Right. And I'm like, wow, you need to have that. And I think that's, if we don't talk about that ability of always having God with us, even if it's a limited conversation, you need to be taught faith. That's really, really important, because then you're never going to have the confidence with your own life that you can achieve great things.
Yeah, I agree. As soon as faith comes, everything falls together. It seems like I'm 24 years old. I've battled addictions, and ever since I actually turned to God, I'm able to beat these addictions.
Right.
And so, and so yeah, thank you for enlightening us with that. It was actually really powerful to hear that testimony. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I could go on and on about that. It's one of the reasons I really wanted to have a Sunday show too. I start my Sunday show. It's still the headmaster's homeroom, but it's Sunday Solutions. And I found this thing. If you guys all saw it on Twitter, it's this little preschool little boy who's saying this prayer over their lunch, and it's so adorable. I just want to cry. And he's like, Father God, and he's a little adorable baby, right? And I play that a lot, and then I read some scriptures depending on what I'm doing. I made some medicine for my dog out of natural ingredients because I couldn't afford to take her to a vet. And luckily, it was not a big ordeal, but it was a little bit of like I felt she had a bladder infection, and looked up things about gardening. If I'm teaching about gardening, I find scriptures about gardening. I find scriptures about healing. Tomorrow, my show, I've been making bread all day and taping it because that's not something I could do in an hour on a podcast, right? So I had to pre-record so you could see because it
Yeah.
takes an hour to rise even in between. But tomorrow I'll have scriptures about, I am the bread of life, right? But but it's just so empowering to have that kind of sense over that show that it really, just feels really great to invite them into your life. And you know what? Try it. There's nothing to lose. There's absolutely nothing to lose. If that you know that you're not alone and you are created by the divine, that means that you are a creature, a person that was, created by someone who's divine. I mean, that's just empowering in itself that you're just not nobody, right? You were literally designed by the creator. And that doesn't matter, no matter where you are, what part of the world, where background you have, what color of your skin are. I love it. And I love that he has, created so much diversity. And I wish diversity was different and celebrated more because I like to look at it like flowers. If he wanted us all to be the same, we'd all be red roses. But look at all the different variety of flowers and colors there are. Right? I mean, that's something we should celebrate, that we just are just this beautiful variety from our creator, right? And it's just like he had a palette and he was like, he's an artist. And you got to give him kudos for that. But it's not going to hurt you. I mean, what's the worst that could happen when you say, hey, I want to get to know you? And all of a sudden your heart just gets filled with so much love. I mean, what's the worst that can happen, that you find that you're not alone? Right? I mean, everybody, I really encourage you to just even ask those questions, find those answers, find those avenues. And it can help you in so many ways, with even just knowing you're not alone. Right?
Yeah.
At least that's what I feel. Like I said, again, you talking to somebody that could talk about God. I became even a youth minister before I even did all this because I was like, I have to help the youth. I have to help the youth. You guys, I just love you guys so much that it breaks my heart. Again, it breaks my heart that you think that you're alone. You have no faith. You don't believe that you can become anything you want to become. And nobody's teaching you the way, or very few. I should say nobody, okay? I'm sure that, like you said, there's great teachers out there, but they're few. They're breaking up your families, and then they're making us parents work 2 or 3 jobs where we never see you. And then you get stuck on social media where they're giving you such negativity. And it's not even over political, it's even over your body. You have to be fat, thin, we're this, we're that. I mean, good grief. You're right, just complete control and making you guys just spin in such depression. It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Definitely breaks my heart. I don't know. Hopefully I continue to do this and we continue to collaborate. I don't know your audience, if it's usually younger people that are listening or if you just got a wonderful mix. Somebody set it up and tell me who's talking because I can't see what you guys are saying. So what's your age groups out there?
Yeah, so I know according to YouTube analytics, we got people that are mostly under the age of 40, which is amazing.
Right.
And but yeah, uh, let's get some questions rolling, guys. We'll give you another 5 minutes, and then we'll head on out. Once again, this is Lady Hamilton of the Headmaster's Homeroom. We can
Yes.
find her over on Rumble. Are there
Yes.
any other platforms you are on?
Yes. Okay. So my media, so I've been on a lot of podcasts, and because I have a nationwide online art integrated school, everyone. So if you're interested in my school, you can find out about that at hamiltonlibertyacademy.com. And it is amazing what we're doing. And parents, if you're listening too, I mean, you literally can watch your students and what they're learning because we're live like we are right now. Everything's done on Zoom, and there's a lot of reasons I opened it online. Number one, I don't get funded by the government. I don't even apply for that. I don't go buy these different programs. I don't mandate my employees or students to do things. And that's another reason why I go online. It's important. I'm not your doctor. I am not qualified to be your doctor. And I really hated that the government made businesses kind of start mandating. They don't do that necessarily so much per se now, but they did. And they made the businesses become the bad guys. And I'm sorry, I am not qualified to tell you what to put in your body. And I felt really uncomfortable with that, whether you're pro or against. I'm not saying that you aren't. But again, I don't want to be responsible of you maybe having side effects or whatever, because I'm insisting on you doing that. And then I wanted to be nationwide. So I went online for that so I could reach youth all over our country. And then the moment I open up a building too, I have to pay so much more with different kinds of insurances and codes, and making sure I definitely have to go by the title programs there, because you have all kinds of different kinds of things. So I have a wonderful art integrated school. We have year 3 coming up this fall, and I love it. Our students say it's more interactive than a public school, which has really blew my mind, but I'm like, awesome. Everything's project based, so it's a lot of fun. We go on field trips, and then we try to have our kids network in an actual live place where we go, like maybe some kind of conference, youth leadership, or whatever conference where you guys get to see each other, at least, a certain group of you do. That's a lot of fun. But I shouldn't say last podcast, but one of the last ones was with my producer, and they're actually Liberty Arise, everyone. So if you go to Rumble, you'll find us under Liberty Arise. And he offered me a podcast because I wanted to bring solutions not only to youth, but I thought, parents don't know this either. If the kids don't know how to start a business, maybe the parents need to. And my assistant headmaster, she came on and we taught business plans. I've taught how to raise chickens. I've taught gardening, and then when I went to CPAC and meeting you guys, I had to split the show to have 2 now. I have Friday nights at 7 p.m. On Rumble. And well, it's also on YouTube, I believe, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, StreamYard. I mean, it's going, my producer has us going on everything, which is great. And he's the political guy.
Yeah.
So, and he has his show 3 times a week, but on my show is Headmaster's Homeroom, and it's on 7 p.m. and then on Sundays at 12. And then Sundays, I show you now the solutions, where we'll teach you about gardening, or we made broth, or I made, like I said, the dog medicine remedy, which is awesome. How to freeze eggs. I mean, just all kinds of crazy stuff. The nurse comes on, he'll answer questions about your health. We comes on once a month, and we call him Nurse Patrick. And so you can go on there and say, okay, my doctor said to take all these things as their side effects, or I have this ailment. What does that actually mean? And he will answer those for you and gives you a way to even reach out to him so that you guys have that, which is really wonderful. And so this has just been a blessing. I had never done podcasts before, but here we are. And the one last Sunday was great. It had a huge audience. I was so geeked out about it. Maybe not hundreds of thousands, but I'll take 1,000.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And people chatting for the first time on my stream. I was like, all right, yay. Don't be afraid, you guys. We love to hear from you. It's awesome. It makes us feel like, there's somebody there that's listening, asking questions, or even when I say a prayer, we had that prayer with that little boy, people were putting amen in there. I'm like, yes, because he was cute. He was really cute. So then in my spare time, when I would joke about it, CPAC, I run the school, right? And we go Monday through Thursday. So, and it's a longer school year, September through June, but you have a lot of breaks, big breaks in between, and then a shortened week, and no homework. If you have homework, that's on you. That's because you didn't finish a project. So I have a lot of things that I do, a lot of things. But you can find me on, and so you can find Hamilton Liberty Academy basically on Truth, Getter, and Gab. And that is because Facebook and Twitter hate me. They absolutely hate that I've been kicked off 4 times, even with Elon Musk there. I've been kicked off of Twitter, or at least Hamilton Liberty Academy has. And we're going to come up with a different way to advertise, which is, I found somebody, again, that same day of the 7 blessings, right? Who's found a way that I can market with them. And because they have a contract, they can't kick me off. I'm like, this is brilliant. But they hate and we're coming up with different taglines, but they hate the all youth are possible. Really, really hate that. I learned that quick. Even paid money to advertise with Facebook, and they suppressed us and we kicked us off 4 times. So I go under Lady Hamilton Art. You'll find that a lot. So Lady Hamilton Art under Twitter, Facebook. You'll see that with Getter, with Truth. I think that is all I have right now. But trying to keep those even going is a lot. Everybody, I'm not. I only can do so much, and I've got a lot of stuff on my plate. But I love that. I love Truth, although they're getting a little suppressive with Hamilton Liberty Academy right now too. They've taken over 2,000 followers from it, and I'm losing 100 a day. I reach out to them, and they take away posts. I don't know what's going on with Truth, but it gets together because I love Truth. Social everyone, and I don't like that they're suppressing. So that's really interesting why you would not want to provide a solution to families that are really wanting to get out of the schools and have a different option. But, I don't know. Again, don't know what I'm saying wrong, but we're finding a way to make that better. But please come to the podcast too. I'd love to chat with you, and answer questions or teach you about things. Parents too, you want to learn some great things. You can even put in the chat, hey, can you teach us about this? And I will put it on a future podcast. I got a lot of people that ask me about bread. So I'm making an Easter bread, or I made an Easter bread called challah bread. It's an egg bread. And it's phenomenal. So you guys will see that tomorrow. Although it looks like I'm kind of tired because I started really early this morning. It's like 5 hours to make bread by the time you're done, but it's really great.
Yeah. Once again, everyone, this is Lady Hamilton of the Headmaster's Room.
Right.
And her podcast is on all of those wonderful platforms. We will be together next Friday, correct?
Yeah, you're coming on mine, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right, to talk about how you're growing as well. That is going to be awesome. Like I said, I have to look at my calendar because I'm going through. But yes, he's going to be coming on mine, I believe, about 8:15 Eastern Standard Time to talk about what he's doing. So he'll be doing more talking that time versus me. I'll be able to be more quiet because, everyone, Anthony's doing great things. And that's just an example with what you can even do and start yourselves. Right? I mean, get your voices out there. And you don't even have to show your face. I mean, I laugh at this, but I was introduced to Cat Turd. Do you guys know who Cat Turd is? No?
Oh
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
just assuming it was a cat with a turd.
Well, no, he's like the 10th most influential person, even on Twitter, from where their poll is. But he has a great podcast in the afternoon, usually during my late lunchtime. And my youth introduced me to who he is. And it's like Cat Turd and Jules. You don't see who they are ever. They have, like you said, he's a white cat with black glasses, and you see high heels for her, but you don't even see their faces. But they have one of the biggest podcasts in the nation. And you're like, this is unbelievable. So you can even start a podcast, everyone, if you camera shy.
Yeah.
That was kind of my point to that. He's also an author, and he also donated books. Is sci-fi author and donated books for our high school to read next year. So that's really awesome. But yeah, I guess, but that's just an example. Do things like Anthony's doing, get your voice out there, start talking to other youth your age and finding out what you have in common. Isn't that what you do? And I can't wait for you to talk about that on my show.
Yes, that's what I do. I can't wait to talk about it on there as well.
Right.
All right. So we're going to end this podcast. Yes, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you once again, Lady Hamilton, for coming on the show. It's great having you on.
Thank you.
And,
It's been my pleasure. I hope I didn't talk your ear off, but thank
no,
you.
no, it was very interesting. I was happy to have you once again. And
Awesome.
as always, I want to end with a historical quote for everyone. This is by Nikola Tesla. If you if your hate could be turned into electricity, it would light up the whole world. If your hate could be turned into electricity, it would light up the whole world. All right, thank you all very much, and God bless.
Bye.